Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Selling Greenville, your favorite real estate podcast here in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm your host, as always, Stan McCune, realtor right here in Greenville, South Carolina, and you can find all of my contact information in the show notes if you need to reach out to me for any of your real estate needs. Please, if you enjoy this content, please subscribe to the show. Please like, rate, review, anything like that to support the episode, to support the show, all of those good things. I have a special guest. Again, I just interviewed Chris White, but we have another special guest on the show. This is Mario Brown, the CEO of Affordable Upstate, and Affordable Upstate has a mission that's near and dear to my heart, which anyone that has listened to the show for some time already knows. We talk a lot about housing affordability. And the main mission of Affordable Upstate is to provide workforce housing in the Greenville area. And so we want to, I talk a lot about the affordability concern, but it's not often that we have a housing affordability expert on the show. And so that's what Mario in his role can be. So Mario, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Stan, thanks for having me. Excited to have a real estate conversation around a place near and dear to my heart, my hometown. Greenville, and I think your experience not only as an agent but also as a property owner, I think really will drive conversation for your audience relative to understanding what the landscape looks like and why affordability is a bigger problem than we might think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's strangely an under the radar problem. Even though everyone complains about the prices in Greenville, nobody seems to want to do anything about it, in my opinion. But besides nonprofits like Affordable Upstate, and several others that are doing a good job. But why don't, just for the casual listener that has never heard of Affordable Upstate, why don't you share with us a little bit about, just put some meat on the bones of what I just said for what you guys do,
Yeah.
how long you've been doing it, and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. First and foremost, we are for profit, right? So we're a mission driven for profit that goes out and we buy, I love to say, properties with the right things wrong with them. So 1970s through 1990s, garden style apartments. We go in through targeted capital improvement program, improve it, layer an affordable housing incentive, namely a tax abatement. And then we manage it in a way that's both economically mobilizing but stabilizing for the resident. With programs like FlexPay, the resident can programmatically split their payments in half to align their expenses and income better, paycheck to paycheck, right? Or
Yep.
a deposit alternative, so they don't have to come up with first and last month's rent. If our average rent, which is right at $1,000, first and last month's rent's $2,000. We also report all positive payments to the credit bureau. So 3% of landlords do that, and we're proud to be one of those. We started our firm about 10 years ago after graduating from Leadership Greenville, which is a great program that our local chamber puts on. I think this is their 50th year. We were or 53rd year. We were class of 43, and
Wow.
really what activated the real estate professional in me was this thought that I could somehow align my professional skills with a community need. To your point, affordability, I'm not sure how it's under the radar, but it's been very evident for a long time that there is a supply demand issue here, and we're seeing it relative to home appreciation, lease rates, and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, and I think I might have accidentally referred you as a nonprofit earlier, so I apologize for that. But that actually is something that you hear people talk about a lot, is that, and this kind of ties into the affordability thing, that sometimes there's this angst that you can't bring down housing affordability with using, let's just call it, capitalistic free market principles. Obviously, you guys are saying, no, we can do this and still make a profit. Why did you choose that model, and how has that just worked for you guys in general?
Yeah, so I think the reason we chose it, and we should really frame this entire conversation around public-private partnership. This isn't innovative to us. We're not the first to do this. This is a very common approach relative to parks and
Hmm.
other municipal projects,
Hmm.
schools, or green space. So yeah, it's public-private partnership. So a for-profit entity working with both the government and a nonprofit to achieve a public good. I think that the reason we chose it was as we sat in Leadership Greenville and listened to all the issues and really assess the players, right? The nonprofits and the government, we'll call them bureaucrats that
Hmm.
were articulating the problem. It was easy to see that um, they needed someone to initiate, right? To initiate and
Yep.
bring them deals, right? So on one side we were hearing that, and the other side we were in the market. So we know how hard it is to actually buy commercial real estate and the hard money that you put into it, or the risk. We've raised just over $50 million from 103 investors during our over the last 10 years,
Wow.
and we knew all those were factors that the government and nonprofits weren't. That format was a hard thing for them to do.
Hmm.
So we saw a great opportunity to bring those things together. By doing that, the investments get a better return because things like property taxes are abated. But the most important part is the community gets housing
Hmm.
at a subsidized rate that it wouldn't otherwise have by parlaying in that P3 structure. So I think for us, it was just a very evident that you almost had to know the local government to actually do this. So, who's going to do it but us? I mean, most of our apartments here in the upstate, and this is throughout the southeast, are owned by New York and California private equity, and that's not anecdotal. That's not conjecture. If you look at complexes that are traded above $10 million or above 100 units, 90% are owned by investors out of state. They don't know the local municipality and its goals.
That's right.
So it's incumbent upon us as residents and citizens of Greenville to bring our skills again and align them with a community need.
What so from your perspective, having done this for 10 years, um, which is coincidentally this same amount of time I've been a realtor, so we both, have some overlap here in terms of the dates. Um, what have you seen as some of the main drivers of the affordability issue in Greenville, which, obviously this conversation has become a lot more poignant since COVID. That's kind of a nationwide thing. It's not, that's not
Mhm.
specific to our area. But beyond that, beyond just the extreme cost of housing going up so much since COVID, what else have you seen?
Yeah, I think the underlying drivers, at least from my perspective, are two, and you're right. They accelerated post-COVID. One is supply demand. Um, Guys, and your listeners, this is like a PSA here. If you're on the list, if you're the number one place to move, you're going to have a problem. There is a
Yeah.
shadow to that,
Yep.
right? Nothing is all good and nothing's all bad. There's contrast here. So because of all of the folks moving in, that drives demand for housing up, right? And the folks that are here and their incomes are based on jobs that are here, they can't easily keep up or compete with the couple moving down from Suffolk County, New Jersey. Let's name a place.
Sure.
Right. So that's one issue. So greater demand because of the immigration and Greenville's how attractive Greenville is as a market. And then I think you look at inflation relative to operating cost. Right. So you're a landlord and an owner just like I am. So when your costs go up, what do we do as any producer? We pass it on. So between those two factors, supply demand and inflation, I think that we've seen I mean rents in that 10-year period. I'd estimate probably 35 to 45% they're up.
It's crazy, yeah. And it's been, It's been a wild thing for me to see as a realtor. Just, it used to be that when I first got into the business, I remember like having a client go under contract for $300,000. That sounded like a lot of money. My first house was
Hmm.
$80,000, back during the recession. And things have changed now. Now the median. I actually just saw GJR just came out with the market stats, which as I'm recording this, that will be the episode that goes probably before this episode. So listeners have already heard about this, but 330,000 is the median price point. That's the median. The average is in the 400s if you want to go with averages. So that's just and it used to be in the 100s. Not that long ago, which is just
Eh,
wild.
and this is quantitative. These are just the numbers. What 330,000 gets you and where in town it gets you.
That's right.
That like to be boots on the ground, you kind of even get more perspective that
Hmm.
and I tell people that, we've kind of focused as a community on these historic neighborhoods like Spartanburg Green Line or Nickeltown. And there have been concerted efforts and conversations around gentrification. Zooming out, I think everybody's been gentrified.
Hmm.
I think what it costs to be in Nickeltown, what it costs to be in Gower, what it costs to be in Parkins Mill, what it costs to be in Malden, everybody's been pushed further south
Sure.
relative to their incomes and relative to the purchase price of a house they wanted to be in.
And the bone that, yeah, and that's actually a great point that, we tend to confine a certain part of the population, a certain area to gentrification. But we are seeing, we probably do need to start rethinking through what that looks like when you have this level of appreciation that happens in such a short period of time. Um, something I've said on the show many, many times over the years is that I don't feel like Greenville County specifically is taking the affordability issues seriously. In fact, we're recording this on July 15th. The Post and Courier just came out with an article about the Greenville County is expected to lose a pretty substantial lawsuit to a developer because they stonewalled a development that they had approved after they got complaints about it, and now taxpayers are most likely going to have to foot the bill for a huge lawsuit, and probably the development is still going to happen. But the point is that they stonewalled it and slowed down the development for several years, and we all want to preserve the character of Greenville. Like that's the big talking point, and that's where county council, and I understand their struggle. They're hearing from the community Greenville's character is not being preserved because of all these apartments, because of all these different neighborhoods that are coming into play. But then we also have to grapple with the growth. So what are your opinions on that? How, having been in your position, having liaised the government and all of that, where is that? How do you strike that balance?
Man, I mean, you're highlighting a great point, and I think you have to understand like how difficult this conversation is. What are we expecting from our elected official? What are we expecting him to understand? Both, capitalism and the capital markets, debt and equity, along with supply and demand, along with construction, along with development. What? I think it's
It's a lot. It's a
unreasonable.
lot for even
And
us to wrap our heads
yes,
around.
yeah. So I think in some ways we have to figure out how to reflect where we are today. I don't. I think we got to let go of preserving character, right? I mean, I really, what is it to preserve character? But like people are, dying in the street or living in the street. Oh,
Sure.
but you've got your character. What if my character? I think our character should really be more embodied around how we take care of our citizens, how we take care of our community, people first, right? Like it doesn't matter if that's a neoclassical architecture
Hmm.
or it's a little modern for your taste, but anytime we limit supply, we exacerbate the problem. So the county stands in they actually they're actually creating the worst problem, right? Like it's
Hmm.
actually they're not just and different in certain ways. But if we restrict supply, even at the high end, we ensure that prices will continue to go up.
Well,
I
that's
was on the
the
top.
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I always love to say with relative to like apartment complexes, today's Class A apartment is tomorrow's naturally occurring affordable housing,
Mhm,
right? So we need to add supply at every level,
mhm.
and I think the difficult thing to accept is that we're not going to see it. We're not going to see relief anytime soon.
Yeah.
It takes so long, right? You understand. We have clients that are building houses and that's a single family home and you see how much planning, how much time, how much friction there is to bring one unit of supply to market. All right, so all
It's a
right,
lot.
it's a lot. So like when you scale that out and you complicate it with government, the government in any way, I think it just complicates all of it. And I think that particularly when you have elected officials who are very much tied to being reelected and their constituents, which that they should be. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to grapple with, but the NIMBYism or not in my backyard. It's almost like
I've talked about them a lot on the show. That
yeah.
my audience is familiar with that term.
Yeah, so as long as that exists and that reflects us, like yeah, I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe.
Yeah, elected leaders are going to keep reflecting that energy as long as the constituents keep doing that. So what, you told me pre-show you're not just in Greenville, but before we recorded this. So how does, in terms of the how the government responds to these sorts of talking points, like let's not worry about character, let's worry about the people. How does Greenville compare to other counties with regard to receptiveness to that? Is Greenville on the more completely unreceptive or more receptive towards that compared to some of these others that you're in?
Yeah, so we actually spent a lot of time with this in terms of rating markets and when we say markets, we mean counties and cities on their P3 activity. Are there rules and statutes conducive to collaborating as a for-profit, or are they restrictive? I think when you look at the city of Greenville, I don't know of another city, at least in the Carolinas, that's putting more energy behind affordable housing. What Shannon and team are doing there it's awesome. They're land banking. They're locking in sites for future affordability. I think the county is having conversations. There are things on the books, but there's a disconnect. For us, we prefer working at the state level, a state level statute, and so the abatement that we utilize is a state statute by right, so that we can be sure that we can go out and borrow $20 million and raise a bunch of money to buy a project and know that we're stabilizing that for the community versus the legislative risks that exist at the county and the city level. I think that there are also tools that the county and the city don't really have visibility to, or there are issues they don't have visibility to, and that's based on their size. And I think that kind of blinds them to some of the easier text amendments that could allow for greater, let's call it, impact capital to go to work in their market. So I'd rate Greenville County a little lower than the city in terms of its focus on affordability and P3, but it's a lot better than other places though, man.
Okay.
It's a lot better than other places. It could be worse.
That's good. I mean, we need it to be better, but it's good that it's not the worst.
Well, I think it could be both. I think it can be not good enough,
Mhm.
but also the friction of, hey, at least we're not at least we're not, blind and dumb like that county. Right? Like so I think that we're going to wrestle with that friction, and I think that's healthy. I think we need to have elected officials and government employees that understand there's going to be friction. Just like building that house, a selection's going to get off. It's a messy deal, right? But
No doubt.
we need to measure it on human impact.
Now, how much of what you guys are doing, and perhaps people that you partner with, is working in the world of trying to build new inventory to satisfy these supply issues versus taking, old inventory, whatever, abandoned property, and rehabbing that.
So we've got a documentary actually we shot over the last year on a 38 unit complex in Berea that we
Okay.
preserved, and it's
Is
going to be
that is
coming out
that
soon.
okay? I was gonna ask, where is that going to be coming out?
So we're working through distribution right now, right? It's
Okay.
not it's not our forte, but we wanted to produce at least a 30 to 40 minute. Hey, here's what preservation is, and in that, Mayor White speaks to the importance of preserving what you have first, because
Mm-hmm.
it's so expensive to build
Mm-hmm.
that new complex, new house. So we've been focused on preservation. I think some of our partners do new development. It's a different game. It's more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say our space is preservation. However, we are in talks about kind of developing a missing middle product, a lower scale that we could fit the rhythm of our residential neighborhoods. We really like that concept,
Mm-hmm.
but our 100% of our business today is in the preservation space.
I think the missing middle piece could become more and more important just to satisfy the NIMBYs. And for those that don't know what we mean by that, or at least I'll give my definition. You can correct it if you have a different way of looking at it. But that missing middle housing tends to be um, higher density housing that's disguised to fit within a lower density type of area. So, duplexes, quadruplexes that fit in a neighborhood without looking like a duplex or a quadruplex, without looking, usually when you walk around Greenville, you can see, okay, that duplex, it looks like an awful looking brick ranch or an old mill house that
Yeah,
was converted,
that's right.
it just doesn't look nice within the community. Some of this missing middle housing is supposed to blend in and not be that sore thumb. Did I explain that well for the audience, in your opinion? What
Yeah,
would you add
yeah,
to it?
no. What I'd add is yeah, the bringing density to single family sites or residential lots that it fits the rhythm of the street, as developers would
Hmm.
say,
Hmm.
right? So that and I think that it's not often focused on because the better you get at the game, the larger the scale, right? Because it's just as much time to develop a triplex with permitting and
Hmm.
timing as it is 100 units, right? So most developers actually grow in scale and sales volume, right? They don't tend to stay in that missing middle
Sure.
zone. But
Yep.
as you look at Sunbelt markets like the city of Charlotte, I think we can really learn something that now that pricing is so expensive, now it makes sense to do a duplex or what developers call a duet. There's actually a very interesting one right across the street today from the Rock Quarry Park. The Rock Quarry Park right there off of downtown.
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
developer put two luxury. It's a luxury duplex, right, for sale.
Hmm.
So that's him bringing higher density to a single family site. Obviously, that's not affordable, but it's more
Right.
affordable for those two couples that'll buy those than them buying one lot and building one house. So
That's right.
so same principle scaled down to to the affordable realms of 70 to 100% AMI.
And you alluded to this earlier, but I did want to mention that there's been multiple studies, but there's one really good one that came out of I think it was about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, that basically showed that even luxury housing supply coming on the market affects affordability downstream because you get the domino effect of, well, the step up buyer that purchases that luxury house releases their inventory, which becomes a step up purchase for someone downstream, and then eventually, all those step ups happen and releases, in theory, affordable housing at the very end of that.
Yeah, let's think about it like this. Let's use neighborhoods that you operate in every day. Yeah, a new house is built in Parkins Mill. A young couple from Gower, they love it. They move into it, right? So what happens to their house? Well, either one of the well, probably someone in Gower buys it, but but that creates a lower price opportunity for someone in Gower. And let's just say that, well, economic mobility is a real thing. And someone living in Nicholtown says, hey, we're having kids. We'd love to be in Gower. So they move to Gower, right? And so what happens to their house in Nicholtown, right? Now we have a $300,000, $400,000 listing in Nicholtown because of the house built in Parkins Mill, right? So that's an application of that
Absolutely.
spectrum. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And I have seen that dynamic happen personally. I've been in the rental space myself since I believe 2013. And I started off, we talked about this a little bit before recording as well. I started off in the Section 8 world. I still have Section 8 rentals. I've sold off most of my properties that qualified that worked in the Section 8 space, but it's very a lot of things are very eye-opening once you enter that space. And one thing in particular to kind of go back to the rehabbing model versus the building model is that sometimes you go into a property that, and I know this because I've done it, that the property has been basically it should not have had people living in it, but people were living in it. Okay,
that's right.
it's so you buy it, your goal is to fix it up, and then you run into all these county or city level restrictions when it comes to um, just the code and just everything that needs to happen in order for them to give you CO. I had one property where they were super focused on the landscaping. The city of Greenville was, and I understand, but that when I bought the property, which had renters in it living in unlivable conditions, very,
Yeah,
very, it
yeah.
was very sad. There were drugs coming in and out, flowing in and out, all sorts of things. There was no focus on the landscaping, but I got penalized for going in there and trying to bring this up to a livable property. Now I have to also focus on all these other things. I get it. I fully understand that that's those rules are in there for a reason. Um, but I'm curious if you guys have run into that sort of thing and what you do about that.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
I'm
I
just
know you've
laughing.
run into it on some level.
No, no, I'm just laughing because it's I think in some ways, yeah, it's necessary, but I think it would be helpful for us to like articulate, what that does to the net rent price that you can charge,
That's right.
right? So if we buy a house for $100,000, the rent would be relative to that $100,000, right? If we go in to renovate it because it's deplorable, it's not livable. All right, we put another 20,000 in, so we're at 120,000. All right, and now through code or we have to put another 5,000 in because of landscaping and time. So what would have been, use the 1% rule, $1,000 rent is now 1,250. So rent's up to 25%
Hmm.
because of the cost to capitalize the full project. I mean, I tell you, I've been on all sides of it, and I actually appreciate the city of Greenville. I think they've actually, with their unified code and even some of the like what they're doing with the tree ordinance, put money back into affordable housing. But I think anytime a government grows and reach, there's going to be more to deal with, right? And
For
so
sure.
my net evaluation is: are they still focused on the right things with that extended reach? Are they still, creating product or programming that the private sector could not do, right? That's what we need our municipality doing, and I think we got to evaluate them on the net. But yes, it is cumbersome as hell to deal with.
Yeah, and yeah, there's obviously got to be a balance to all of that. I wish we had a way for we don't currently have this mechanism, at least not for the mom and pop landlord. Perhaps others do, but not a mechanism for giving perhaps additional leniency for someone that's taken unlivable property and making it livable, which I don't necessarily have that's more of a problem without a solution.
I think no, I think that's a great point. I think I mean, everyone's up in arms, and obviously with recent changes in legislation around corporate ownership of single family homes and how that's actually driven up single family home values, right? So these are now rental houses that this big corporation owns. Um, so what can the city do to promote local ownership? Because it's a local landlord that actually accepts a Section 8 voucher.
That's right.
The corporate one does not.
Hmm.
So there is a conversation to be had there. How do we promote local ownership? And I think to begin this conversation, that's what we actually saw in the apartment space. Hey, if there's not local ownership, there's no connective tissue to the nonprofits and the public good needed in the community. If it's all done from New York, how's that nonprofit gonna approach, convince? How's the housing authority going to convince New York private equity to accept a voucher? They're not.
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's not. I won't say it's a heartless business, but it's the capital business. So I think promoting local ownership and then engaging it through the housing authority. And I think I'd love to hear a question for you in terms of your experience there. I know that's been over the years another time cost is managing the housing authority's vouchers within our units. But as a landlord to landlord, what's been your net experience kind of over that period that you
Yeah.
referenced?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I want to first off shout out to my property manager, Kimberly, with Expert Property Management. I could not have ever entered the Section 8 space without her. So I know that she and her mother listens to the show, so I'm going to give her a shout out. And
Well deserved.
yes, yes, Expert Property Management. That's a free endorsement. Um, but she has handled the in terms of the when I have a property, when we get those inspections that come through and it needs this or that, she has handled that exclusively for me. And here's what's frustrating, and uh, maybe it's gotten better. I don't know, but you know, and this also happens when you're doing a rehab too. You have someone that goes out there. I like to call them clipboard warriors. They go out there and tell you, here's all the things you need to do. You do them all, and then the next clipboard warrior comes out and they find more things that the first person didn't. And then you kind of keep going through that cycle until eventually, you know, now you've had a vacancy for several weeks longer than you anticipated. And your expenses are increasing because you're having to do all these little things that probably aren't actually impacting the future tenant in any meaningful way. In some cases, we've got the tenant signed on already, trying to get them off the street, but we can't because we're trying to, there's a few, outlet plates that are cracked or whatever, something that genuinely doesn't prevent a person from moving in, and that you and I have probably bought and sold homes that had these issues without anyone caring. But the housing authority cares. And while I do respect, obviously, what they're doing, they're trying to protect these people from predatory landlords and landladies. Um, that has been the biggest complaint that I've had, and the biggest complaint that I've heard from people in the program is dealing with those inspectors. Um, that being said, having someone like Kimberly that actually knows how to navigate all of that really, really makes a huge difference and takes a lot of it. It's made it to where it's still not been such a burden for me that I'm like, I I'm opting out of this program. I have heard others say that it's such a burden that they want to opt out, and they have. For me, it's not been that way. I think the biggest challenge, so the biggest benefit of that program is the ease of payment. That direct deposit, just goes into your account. It's fantastic. My biggest complaints have been, a turnover is difficult in the Section 8 space. If
Mhm.
you get people moving out after a year, you're really not going to make money if that's happening year after year, and that can be a challenge. And then the other one has been that sometimes someone comes on with a full voucher So the entirety of their rent is covered by the housing authority, and then they get a new job, and now they're expected to pay part of their rent because their income went up. And I've found that some of these tenants are not prepared for that. They're not prepared. Oh, now I have to. Before, I was, and you can't. If I remember correctly, I don't think that you can adjust your lease at that point. The lease is set in stone. It's already been agreed to by the housing
Hmm.
authority. And so they have agreed to a 1,200-hour lease. The housing authority was paying for that. Now they have to pay $400 a month because they got a new job, and I've had situations where now a tenant can't afford, because they got a better job, they can't afford they can't afford their lease. And I wish that was a better system.
And no, I'm right there with you. I think you hit on a major point. I think a lot of the inspections, and a lot of the diligence and the B-backs, the clipboard warriors, as you say, it is to protect the resident from slumlords. Let's call it
Hmm.
that.
Absolutely.
Or actually, but you said the local or landlords and landladies,
Predatory
predatory.
landlords.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Which I think that, the housing authority has been so concerned about that there are no more landlords and landladies. Now it's just corporations
Yeah.
because you've been so difficult to work with. And corporations don't want it because the demand in the market is high enough.
Hmm.
The cost of, like, the ease of payment, that's the biggest benefit you named. And it is. But it isn't now. Like, now I got, now I've got to work with you on, managing the residents' income, and I
Hmm.
got to take 400 in my ledger, then I got 800 from you. Like, how do they I think it's that's public-private partnership. How can they make it easier for the local for-profit person who has a house or two that they want to, what would make them say yes? What would make them say yes? And if it's going to be more work, more time, and
Yeah.
more frustration. I think this is an investment principle that I don't know that the, housing authorities overall have a good track on, but it's the time value, yeah, so time cost, right? So, we're buying revenue streams with these houses. If you're telling me that my
Sure.
revenue stream is going to be more erratic, that I'm going to have 30% more time in, what would make me say yes outside
Right.
of my concern for my community, which, and the responsibility? What would make someone who wasn't in the know, who couldn't hire a professional manager like you have? You're a professional hiring a professional, and it
Yeah.
works. But what if you weren't and you wanted to do it yourself,
It's
right?
hard. It's hard to
It's
do.
super hard. Yeah, super hard.
Yeah, and the barrier to entry is obviously a big problem. I mean, I have people come to me all the time, just like, "Hey, how do I get into the Section 8 space?" And I'm just like, "You got to talk to my property manager because I am not the person. I acquire the properties, and that's it." And I think that that's the best bet for people. Um, so what in terms of the private public or public private type of partnerships that are out there, what more could be done with regard to that? I'm curious in our area.
I think from a for-profit owner side, I think it's really looking for opportunities to create what I think we all thought Section 8 could be, and I think that's through parlaying with nonprofits, right? I think there are several local nonprofits that have programs where they want to come in and do a master lease and bring case
Hmm.
management, that are way easier to work with. They actually filter the bureaucratic noise in that government dollar. So think about it like this: the housing authority brings federal dollars through a housing choice voucher to a landlord, right? Those are federal dollars. So that's where
Hmm.
all those cumbersome rules are. Nonprofits do the same, but they actually let's they yeah they filter the noise, right? They
Hmm.
handle the bureaucratic reporting side, and it's more of a partnership. And so I think we have some 20 or so nonprofits that reside in our apartment complexes in different formats. Some master lease a few units, some master lease 10 units. But I think that as a for-profit is really going to the nonprofit community, and really understanding how you can fill a need for them. And that need is they need housing units. They're not great at buying a house like you are. They're not great at idea and the capex and having the contractors, management, all that infrastructure you've built out or others have. Yeah, I think that it's looking to those in the community that have the dollars by way of grants, but don't have the physical units. Those are the great partners in public-private partnership in my mind right now.
Sure. So we'll probably, I'll give you an opportunity to say, to add something here at the end, but probably my final question for you, unless I have follow-up. So we've talked a lot about the issues, right? And obviously, if I'm listening to this show, I'm thinking, okay, Mario and Affordable Upstate, they're doing all these great things. I have some rental properties, and this whole Section 8 thing is not for me, whatever. What do I do? What is the mom and pop landlord, landlady that's listening to this? It's not predatory, that does want to do something, or maybe even they're not a landlord or a landlady. Maybe they see this issue, they want to do something. What can people do that don't have a nonprofit or a for-profit entity specifically oriented around this topic?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great question, and I think that outside of really going to where the conversation is, I think Greenville, particularly the city of Greenville, but several nonprofits are great conveners of conversations, right? So one, get in the mix, and none of this is going to be free, right? So meaning either you pay in time or you pay in money, right? So I think, but I do think that it's 100% worth the time to get educated on the nonprofit mandates, their missions, and how a for-profit small landlord could partner with them. I think that I tell folks this every day. Everything I learn about affordable housing, from AMIs to all the superfluous acronyms. There's so many acronyms. It's a great moat around your real estate activity. Every year, that knowledge becomes worth more money because I am sold on the supply and demand issue. Affordability is not going anywhere. It's only going to get worse. So by parlaying that, with nonprofits or the housing authority in certain formats, and it's my opinion that is a way to offset some of the inflation folks are realizing. You're right. It's I think that's one in terms of the nonprofit community, but I also think that there's you hit this. I think professional management is I think it's too hard to do it anymore. It's too hard to bootstrap. You got to bake that management cost, if it's 10% into your pro forma, because otherwise, there's too many things to get to know, and there's too many tripping hazards. I almost look at it like, hey, that's the way I can cap my cost.
Yeah.
I can, it's a little higher. Maybe I'm used to 35% operating expense ratio. That's going to be 40%, but it's a fixed 40 versus a variable 35. Yep. Right. And again, we're looking for stability of revenue, right? Or cash flow. And I think it was beautiful the way, I look at my manager or talk about them, know a property management, with the same, and endearing look I saw in your eye. Is that, yeah, they are the operational convener. They understand the landscape, and without them, it'd be me fumbling around meetings, really not ever really getting residents placed, housing provided, and operations, stabilized.
Is there anything that, let's say that there's someone listening, they've got like a duplex or a triplex or something like that. They don't want to do Section 8. They're just looking for maximum profit, but they do have a heart towards this affordability issue. What can they do? Is there anything that they can do within the framework of that property?
Yeah, I would.
To maintain profit, to keep things numbers that pencil, but to still make a little bit of a dent in this iceberg of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, if we got to look at 80% AMI real quick. 80% AMI for a three-bedroom house is probably close to $1,500. So we're not talking about a
Hmm.
$500 rent house. We're talking about a really healthy lease rate.
Hmm.
So I think it's understanding where their market rent for their property is relative to the AMIs in the area. Hey, if I'm charging $1,600, all right, who does that actually reflect? What job, what AMI does that reflect? And then that tells me, hey, oh wow, I'm actually providing affordable housing here at 80% AMI. Man, maybe there are some incentives. Maybe there is a nonprofit I can partner with, and now, hey, I can speak their language. I'm 80% AMI. Do you want to do a master
Hmm.
lease?
Hmm.
But I think I call a few managers by name. Clark Merritt over at Philmont, or Brian over at Progressive Properties. Like, those guys are great hybrid guys that actually balance the that price point, right? That
Hmm.
it's workforce affordable, right? It's not capital A
Hmm.
affordable.
Hmm.
So I think that's another.
That's
That's
right.
another. Education is probably the biggest barrier for that duplex owner.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, just like you got to be more savvy to buy today, the way you finance it, the way you do it, you got to be more. It's a little more nuanced to own things today, and the
Hmm.
education is often the gap.
Hmm. Are there any
So
resources? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so you can hire that. You can sub that out by hiring a professional, or you can go do it, or you can go learn it yourself through listening to guys like yourself, or learning it like I did a bunch of years ago off Bigger Pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Bigger Box is a great resource for a lot of people. It's kind of like the Reddit of the real estate world in a
That's right.
sense.
That's right. That's right.
Um, so are there any resources that are out there for, let's this, person that has a small little rental portfolio. They have to still make money with that, but they want to help with the housing affordability thing. Where would you direct them?
And I would honestly, outside of telling them to go use Claude or ChatGPT, yeah, I would just have them narrow their search to the nonprofit community. There's so many I'm not going to list because I don't
Sure.
have favorites, but I think that there is a wealth of knowledge. These nonprofits, they receive grants. They are quick to articulate their impact and what they need. They hire these folks that do these studies. It's a wealth of knowledge. Just changing your lens in terms of of where you're going to get the information. But I think online there's a wealth of information there. Just carry the lens of a not like local nonprofits and affordable housing as a keyword, and there's literally, it's limitless.
Absolutely. Those are all the questions I have. I think this has been a great show. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to make sure that we brought up?
I think no, I think I would just kind of cap the conversation with, our thesis over time has become, how do we replace private risk with public participation? How do we go in and, as a market rate actor, do all the activities, like you said, buy that crappy house, deal with that bad situation, stabilize the physical asset, and then how do we then replace our risk with participation by way of a housing choice voucher, a nonprofit partnership, a tax abatement, or even selling units or homes to nonprofits. Homes of Hope is another great institution in our market.
Yep.
So I think it's actually seeing yourself as a provider of housing for the community, and because most of the homes you look at aren't owned by, or excuse me, they're commercial real estate at least, or they're not owned by folks that are within 100 miles of here. So your perspective, boots on the ground, is super important for your listeners, right? Like, if your boots on the ground,
Yep.
you're seeing it go down. You're seeing what inflation and what growth looks like. And I think wisdom and the wisdom on the podcast would suggest, look at the shadow, look at your neighbor. Well, who's not doing well now, and how can you do something about it?
Sure. And I would just challenge all the realtors listening to this, which we have a decent number of realtors that tune into the show. The Greater Greenville Association of Realtors is constantly working with organizations like Homes of Hope, Habitat for Humanity, Rebuild Upstate, all that are kind of adjacent to this conversation. I had the opportunity to attend the Homes of Hope gala that they had, and were you at that by any chance?
Not the most recent one. I
Okay,
was on their board for about 5 years, and
sure.
what Don Oglesby's done. I mean, he's the GOAT.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's incredible what they're doing, and it was funny. I had either a first or second degree connection. They showcased two different people that had gone through the program. I had either a first or second degree connection to each one of those people, which just shows you these people are just in our community. Like you don't even necessarily know. You might know someone that's being helped by an organization like Homes of Hope or Habitat or whatever, and you're not even aware of that because you're walking past them in the grocery store. You might be going to church with them. You might be, in a park with them. Who knows? But these are just normal people. I think they can be stigmatized sometimes that for whatever reason. But a lot of these people are just normal people in the community that,
That's right.
for whatever reason, they just need help because the market has outpaced their income.
Man, Stan, I should have started with this, and this will be my kind of last buzz statement. But I love to tell people that I live in affordable housing and they live in affordable housing.
Hmm.
They're like, what? They're like, what? What?
Hmm.
No, what? Well, what is the definition of affordable housing? It's 30% of your income. What? And for your agents listening, debt to income, what is that?
Yep.
So 27% of my income, no more than that, will the bank underwrite me to buy a house? So it's this. We all live under the same like guidance,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like I live in like housing affordable to me based on my income, right? And and,
Absolutely.
and so and so do all and so does the whole community. And I think who are the folks we're talking about, the workforce, teachers, cops, baristas, those folks that yeah, like how does that income at 30%? What does that get someone today? And I think it blows your mind when you look at it like that.
And as we grow, we need more cops and more teachers and more firefighters and,
Absolutely.
and all of that.
Absolutely.
And so we can't just turn off our blinders to all of those people at the end of the day.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Mario, thank you so much for this discussion. Really, really enjoyed everything you had to say. I'll put your contact information in the show notes. I'll get
Thanks.
that from your assistant. But if the people want to find you or your organization, where should they go?
Yeah. So if you want to reach out, find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the most public place I am. But if you have someone that is looking for affordable housing, noahpm.com. So Noah is our property management company. They do a great job of marketing the 3,000 apartments they manage here in the upstate. Accessibility is another issue that we need to get into today. It's like,
Hmm.
how does someone find it when it's there? Right.
Yeah,
So yeah, but noahpm.com is a great place to send someone in your community or in your life that needs an average rent of $1,000 and something in and around town.
absolutely. Well, that was Mario Brown of Affordable Upstate, everyone. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, rate, review, subscribe. Please check out the contact information in the show notes for my contact, for Mario's contact information, and I'll talk to you guys again next time.